Hey, what's up guys? Tyler here with Secure Team. Man, do I have something to show you guys today, and this is pretty damn creepy. Now, I was emailed this information by a viewer of ours who was following the ULAlaunch.com website, and the ULA basically is a joint venture between Lockheed Martin and the Boeing company formed in 2006 to provide reliable, cost-efficient access to space for U.S. government missions. So it's basically like a private NASA that is working with the government to launch private things, we'll call them, into space. Things that the government doesn't want us to know about. So then I came across this story about this rocket launch that had been canceled. Well, actually, it had been delayed multiple times and was then finally canceled due to, quote, weather conditions. So a Delta IV heavy rocket was set to launch what is called the NROL-37. Now, you're seeing a clip from the ULA webpage here describing the mission. And this thing was supposed to launch from Cape Canaveral yesterday on June 9th. And it says here, the ULA Delta IV NROL-37 launch was scrubbed for the day due to violation of multiple launch weather criteria. Now, I want you to take a very close look at the mission patch and imagery for this particular launch. And I will give you a close-up version here. And I want you to look at this image. Now, do you notice anything strange that they're using as their logo for this launch? I don't know. Maybe just a black knight sitting in the picture with the American flag draped in the background, the rocket on the side, shooting up into space, and we have a picture of literally a black knight. Now, I don't have to tell you, or maybe I do, but black knight satellite. Now tell me this isn't eerie as hell. Now here is the mission patch for this mission, for this launch. Once again, giving us another view of this black knight. Now this cannot be a coincidence. We've done videos in the past about the Black Knight satellite, and now we have this rocket launch led by a company who does private launches for the government, whose mission patch, at the very center of which contains a black knight riding this black horse here. And just tell me that isn't spooky as hell. Now, for those of you who don't know, I know most of you do, but we are getting a lot of new subscribers. But basically, the Black Knight satellite, which we've talked about many times before, is basically this unknown object that was found to be orbiting Earth way back 50 plus years ago that is thought to be of an extraterrestrial origin. Some quick facts about the Black Knight satellite. Starting in the 1930s, astronomers worldwide had been reporting these very strange radio signals which were coming from this object. This object that is orbiting Earth that they noticed would not only change speed, but would also change direction, to the point where they would completely lose it and wouldn't even be able to track it anymore. The US and the Soviet Union have shown interest in this object, and the evidence has corroborated that this satellite, as we're calling it, has been transmitting radio signals for over 50 years now. Now, in 1957, Dr. Luis Corrales of the Communications Ministry in Venezuela photographed the Black Knight while taking pictures of Sputnik 2 as it passed over Caracas, which is the largest city of Venezuela. And later that year in 1957, an unknown object was actually seen shadowing the Sputnik 1 spacecraft, and that it was in polar orbit. Now, another fun little fact, in 1957, the United States nor the Russians possessed the technology to maintain a spacecraft in polar orbit, which didn't happen until the first polar orbiting satellite was launched in 1960. Now, in the 1960s, the Black Knight was located again in polar orbit, and astronomers calculated that the object's weight had to be over 10 tons, which would be at the time the heaviest artificial satellite in orbit around Earth. Now, supposedly, although it's never been released for good reason, the Grumman Aircraft Corporation took a picture of this thing on September 3rd, 1960, 7 months after the satellite was first detected by radar, by a tracking camera from the corporation's Long Island factory. And the Grumman Aircraft Corporation had formed a committee even to study the data received from observations made about this. However, this was a leak, and obviously none of it was made public. So we have bits and pieces coming from people back then in the 60s and the 50s who have been able to give us details here and there when they could. Although obviously this is a very sensitive subject, and many have refrained from coming out about it under fears that they would be hurt or killed. Time magazine even wrote about the Black Knight on the 7th of March 1960, if you guys want to try to look up that issue. And so there's been a lot of information about this mysterious object that to this day is likely still orbiting our planet. And we've talked about the ham radio operator who back in the 60s apparently decoded a series of signals from the object and interpreted that the object had come from a star chart coming from the craft that was centered on the Epsilon Boot star system, and that it had come to Earth around 13,000 years ago. Furthermore, another magazine, Aviation Week and Space Technology, on August 23, 1954, released a story about this thing, which actually angered the Pentagon, who were trying to keep the information about this thing secret. And so basically, we have this launch here that has now been delayed, and what we know about this rocket is that basically it's a secret spy satellite. That's what we know thus far. The Delta IV rocket, which was supposed to launch this secret spy satellite into space, was doing so under the arm of the National Reconnaissance Office. That is who is behind this secret spy satellite. Now, doesn't that sound like a very endearing name, National Reconnaissance Office? It actually reminds me of another object that was sent up to the moon. You may have heard of it, called the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which we've talked about many times in past videos, that was sent up to, well, you guessed it, do reconnaissance and take images of the moon, mainly the backside, where a lot of these structures that were not made by us were seen. And again, the purpose of this launch that has as its mission patch a picture of a Black Knight, a very kind of evil-looking Black Knight, now that I look at this image. Badass, at least, we'll say that. A very badass-looking Black Knight, which supposedly, according to the government, is supposed to represent, quote, freedom, with the claws representing extreme reach with global coverage. Just reciting those words, I feel more protected already. So, I mean, again, this thing was supposed to take off from Cape Canaveral to put into space this classified object. And then we have the patch here with the Black Knight, and it's just very suspicious to me. Could this be a satellite sent up there to possibly track the real Black Knight satellite? And why has the launch been delayed so many times to the point of now being canceled? Or really has it been canceled? It could already have been, I mean, it could, for all we know, it could be up in space already. But to think that they have just scrubbed it due to, quote, bad weather conditions. And these are the guys, I mean, this is the government we're talking about here. These guys plan these things down to a T. They know what the weather is going to be well in advance. And you're telling me that it was delayed 4 or 5 times and now it's canceled? I don't believe that for a second. And the more I'm looking at this Black Knight on the logos here, the more suspicious I'm getting. I definitely think something is up here. The Black Knight is one of the most mysterious and well-known anomalies of ufology. It is not just some myth. It has been corroborated by multiple people, newspapers, up through the 40s and 50s and 60s have run stories citing statements from military personnel, alluring to the fact that the U.S. Air Force had reported that in one case they had seen 2 satellites orbiting Earth that they had detected, when at that time, in the 50s, no one had the technology to launch a satellite. And this was in 1954. And then in February 1960, Time magazine reported on it, about how the U.S. Navy had detected a dark object, thought at first to be a Soviet spy satellite. However, which later, Time magazine was forced to print a follow-up article wherein which they stated, oh no, it's nothing. It actually, in fact, is, quote, the remains of an Air Force Discover satellite that had gone astray. Yeah, right. It sounds like Time magazine printed an article and it pissed off the government, and they were forced, under God knows what types of threats, to print a second article, whitewashing the entire first article, and giving a beautiful cover story about how it was just a satellite gone astray. Yeah, it's a satellite that's gone astray. That's what it is. I guess it's case closed. Gordon Cooper, even, in 1963, the astronaut Gordon Cooper even reported a UFO sighting of this object in his 15th orbit in Mercury 9 that was confirmed by tracking stations. And an interesting thing to note, we were talking about polar orbits earlier, about how this object was seen in polar orbit. Well, polar orbits are used for Earth mapping, Earth observation means, and basically for objects that are doing reconnaissance. So that would put the Black Knight in the same category as any other reconnaissance object or satellite that is currently observing the Earth. So, again, very mysterious. We have a classified rocket here. Well, spy satellite, as they're calling it, being sent up. It's been delayed multiple times, and just so happens to feature the Black Knight in all of its glory on the mission patch and the official logo of the launch. So, let your clock tick on that for a second, and let me know what you guys think. So, again, thank you for watching. Be sure to share this video. This is some amazing stuff. Let's get it out there. Like and subscribe on your way out. I really appreciate it. And, yeah, I'm going to see what else I can dig up on this thing. So, again, thanks for watching. Stick around because we've got a lot more coming. And stay safe.